And a 1, and a 2, and a 1, 2, 3.
Ryan Metzler's top 100 games of all time. Some are good and some are bad and some are sublime. Ryan has a PhD, loves his Euro certainly. Felt his favorite, can't you see? So here's his favorite
Top 100 games.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining me yet again. I'm just back from a weekend of gaming at the Gaming Hoopla, which is a local convention that benefits cancer research through the American Cancer Society. So I had a great weekend of gaming, playing dexterity games and Euros and all types of fun stuff. But now I'm back here, a little bit behind on my top 100 videos, but I'm here to bring you yet another 10 games. This time looking at games number 50 to 41. So we're into the top 50 games of my choice. Real quick, why don't we just go ahead and see what they are, because I don't have anything else exciting to tell you.
Number 50, Blood Bowl.
My 50th favorite game is one that I don't get to play very often, and it's one from Games Workshop. Now, this is probably one of the most random games on my list. It is Blood Bowl, which is a chaotic miniatures game that plays out on a board with football-like rules, and it's basically combat-based football. And you get to, buy your miniatures, and they're very expensive, and you paint them up, and you flack them, and you put them on these bases, and they're basically, kind of little pieces of art that you're using to move around the board. And the better you've painted them, of course, the more fun they are to play with. So it has that collectible aspect to it. But this is a game, as I said, where each player kind of builds their own team, and then will play that team against another opponent's team. And you can carry it out over time to have, upgradable players, and the players can die, and they can, get better, or they can die, or they can be injured temporarily. And you can push players around in order to steal the ball from them. So there's no, penalties called really most of the time. There are fouls, but you can be a lot more violent in this game than you can in real football. The goal is, of course, to score points, be it by scoring goals or injuring other players is a good way to score points to level up your characters. But it is very random. It involves rolling dice. You roll these little six-sided dice that have, hits or misses or dodges or fall down on them. And you're trying to get better die rolls than your opponent by outmaneuvering them with your pieces, gaining the advantage, and, of course, hitting them in order to take the ball or stop them from hitting you. It's very fun, very chaotic, not a game for somebody who's looking for something they're going to be able to control all the time, but through strategic play you can, of course, mitigate the effects of the dice and, plan to have things work well, even though they may not. So very fun, very chaotic, one of those games where you can make your game look beautiful by painting the pieces. And if you're looking for a dice game that has some strategy to it and, of course, simulates a sport pretty well, check it out. That's Blood Bowl.
Number 49, Tois.
After that thematic foray, we're now back into the world of Euros that I'm comfortable with. And this time we're going to take a look at Tois. Tois is my 49th favorite game. Now, Tois is a dice rolling game where players are going to earn dice by placing workers out onto the board. And these workers will give them more dice in the future, but those dice will be rolled and placed into a central area of the board where everyone has access to them. And you can use dice and pay other people to use their dice. So if you roll well, that's all great and grand, but you better use those good dice before someone else gets the chance, because they might buy them from you. And of course, you get a little bit of money back, but you lose your really good roll that maybe you needed. So you have to kind of prioritize what's important to you. Do you really need to use that red die before somebody else buys it from you, or do you need to use your yellow dice first? And those dice are going to be placed in order to, score victory points by building buildings, or to get more workers, as I said. Or you can use them to combat events that are happening at the bottom of the board. And these events will have negative effects for certain people. Now, these events can be combated by everybody, and you're going to cooperate a little bit to try and finish them, but the person who does the best in combating the events is going to get the most points. So you have to kind of choose what you want to do, and you're going to have access to these dice, but you're not going to have access to all of them. You're going to be able to steal dice from other people, but, maybe they'll use them before you have the chance. It's all kind of a tactical game in that aspect, with some strategy behind it, trying to plan for the future, but having to adjust if something goes wrong for you. So it's very interesting use of dice rolling, one that kind of gives you access to everybody's resources, but still has the randomness of having to roll the dice, and kind of makes it a very interesting way to play that out. So if you're looking for an interesting use of dice, check this one out. This is Tois, number 49 of my top 100.
Number 48, The Duke.
Number 48, we have a relatively recent abstract. This was one that came out not too long ago from Catalyst Games. It's one that I, previewed a while ago, and then I got the final copy, I reviewed it, and I really like it, and it made it into my collection, and that's the Duke. Now, this is an abstract that chess players are going to like. If they're looking for something a little different from chess, they're going to like this one because you have various pieces in it that all have different abilities, but anytime you move one of your pieces, that piece's ability changes. So they can jump, some of them, they can slide, some of them can actually target pieces by shooting them and removing them from the board. But these pieces, once you use them, flip over to their other side, which has a different set of abilities. In addition, you don't start with all of your pieces on the board. You'll start with some pieces, but later in the game, you'll be able to pull more pieces out, place them onto the board around your Duke, and then use them, as part of your strategy to capture your opponent's Duke, which is the goal of the game. As I said, the pieces are very different. They included the ability to make your own custom pieces, so if you want to do that, you can. And they've also included some scenarios that you can play. So inside of this box, you have the base abstract game and several other ways you can play, as well as the ability to customize it for yourself. And that makes this a great abstract. It's well thought out, it has a ton of strategy, and there's a memory aspect even in being able to remember what the opposite side of your and your opponent's pieces do. So it has all kinds of great stuff going for it. Definitely very replayable, easy to learn. That's the Duke. You should definitely check it out if you're a fan of abstracts.
Number 47, Mirms, something like that.
The next game on my list is one that I was lucky enough to receive from my great Secret Santa from Board Game Geek last year. That game is Mirmes, or Mermez, or however you say this name. It's a game about ants. This is a Euro game about ants, and each player has their own ant colony that they're trying to manage. They start off with some worker ants, and some soldier ants, and some nurse ants, and you need to try and kind of multiply these ants. Now, it's going to be important to get more nurses in order to breed more ants of different types. And you'll do that on your own little colony board, and you're kind of managing that, trying to build up your colony, build up their abilities, and make them better. But all the while, you need to send out other ants into the wild to merge or to interact with the environment and to interact with other players. And sending them out to create farms of cubes will be a way to manage and gather resources which you can use to upgrade your colony. But you're going to have to interact with other players who are also taking up space and kind of blocking you off. And you want to make a big area of your farms to collect those goods, but you want to be careful to not overuse your workers because once they are sent out of the hive, they're gone and you're going to have to breed new ones to use later. So you're trying to manage all of these actions, manage your resources to build up your own hive, but also use your resources to make workers to send out to buy more resources, to get more resources to use for later. And it's kind of a challenging aspect to balance both of those things. You'll see a lot of players who kind of ignore the whole nurses in the beginning, and if you watch Tom's video, he actually made the mistake of ignoring them. But everybody, if everyone ignores it, that's certainly a viable play style, and the game will adapt and change based on how the players are playing. So, very strategic, a game about ants. There's only a couple of those that I know of, and this is a good one. So if that sounds good to you, check it out. That's Mirmes, or Mermez.
Number 46, Cyclades.
So now we're on to a game which is kind of a war-ish type game, but it's not really a war game. It's more of an area control game and a resource management game. And that game is Cyclades by Madagot Entertainment here. And this is a game, of course, that's involving gods. You are trying to please these gods, but you're going to use the favor of these gods in order to accomplish various different things. Moving around to different islands, summoning monsters, using those monsters to your benefit, conquering various different places and building buildings. But each of the gods will rotate in and out, and you're going to have to bid on these gods in order to try and get their favor. Depending on the favor you get, if you get Ares, you're going to have extra power for your land troops. If you get Poseidon, it's going to be for your sea troops. If you get Zeus, that's just simply card that you'll get, and having those cards is good. But basically, you're going to collect these favors. You're going to use these favors in order to try and build buildings. And using those or getting those buildings is going to allow you to build temples eventually, and temples are going to be how you win the game. Now, there are other ways to build temples. Collecting some cards will allow you to build temples. Stealing buildings from other players will allow you to get the buildings you need to steal to get temples. So you can take the strategy of trying to build them on your own, or trying to collect various favors to build them, or you can simply just try and kind of position yourself to steal them from other players players and have them at the right time. The first player to get a certain number of temples is going to win the game. So you'll be navigating the board, trying to manage your money, collect more money, and use that money to bid on the gods that you need at the right time in order to build the buildings you need to build the temples and win the game. And you all the time need to be making sure that you're not allowing somebody else to build the last building they need in order to win the game, so you can kind of attack them and prevent that. But very kind of tactical in that aspect. The resource collection, the money collection, combined with the bidding, the way the bidding works makes it really interesting. I have a review of this one out there, I think. Maybe I don't, but if I don't, somebody does. Check it out. But this is a great game. You should definitely check it out. That's Cyclades.
Number 45, Eclipse.
Now we're on to a 4X game, and it's actually the only game in my top 70 games that I do not currently own. And that's because I think everybody owns this game at this point, at least everyone in my game group does. That game is Eclipse. You can see it up here right now. But Eclipse is essentially a 4X game. You're going to be exploring, expanding, exterminating, and something else. I don't know what they all are. But the concept here is that you're in space and everybody has their own race. They could be humans, they could be aliens, but they're trying to expand their race out into unknown space and essentially kill off aliens, improve their tech tree, and fight the other players in order to control the most space, which is worth the most points. Getting into combat will get you points. Getting more technologies will get you points. Fighting, other players, or just simply holding space will get you points. But the way that this works is you can take a certain amount of actions, and the more actions you take, the more it's going to cost you in upkeep for the next turn. And you're managing 3 resources. You're managing your money, you're managing your science, and you're managing your building materials. Now, money allows you to kind of take more actions, whereas building materials is going to allow you to build more ships, and science is going to let you get new technologies, be it new weapons or the ability to travel through wormholes or various other things like the ability to mine more resources. So you're trying to balance all of this out, at the same time trying to end up in situations where combat is beneficial to you, and you're going to have to utilize the luck of dice a little bit in order to succeed in those combats. But the more prepared you are, the better it's going to work out. It has an epic feel. It's a big game. There's lots of tiles. You're building the map out, and they're all hexagonal tiles. You're trying to explore around other players and sometimes lock other players out of coming and attacking you, all the while trying to get to the highest victory point tiles or build victory point buildings for yourself. It plays out very well. It's not too hard to learn, but it has an epic feel. There's a lot of combat, there's a lot of space exploration, and it looks really cool on the board. If you haven't seen it by now, definitely check it out. That is Eclipse.
Number 44, Alien Frontiers.
Coming in at number 44, we have Alien Frontiers. Alien Frontiers is another dice rolling game in which players are going to have their own set of dice, and these dice represent spaceships. They're going to be rolling these dice in order to try and get various combinations. They could be runs, or they could be 3 of a kind. They could be 2 of a kind. You can actually use individual dice if you don't have something better to use them for. But rolling these dice and placing them out on the board in various combinations is going to get you various benefits. Some of them will allow you to get more ships. Some of them will allow you to steal resources from other players. Some combinations will allow you to get resources, be they fuel or ore, and you can use those resources again to build ships or to put colonies out onto the planet that you're trying to colonize in the game. Now, the whole point of the game is to have the most colonies or the most control of different areas out on the planet. So each player is going to have a set number of colonies, and they're trying to build those out as fast as possible to get the most points. Each area that you're in is going to give you 1 victory point, but each area that control will give you 1 victory point as well. So you can go up and down in victory points, and this is kind of the balance you're trying to maintain in the game, is that you want to have the most victory points, but sometimes it's more important to knock someone else down in victory points than it is to gain a victory point for yourself, because if they're too high at the end of the game, of course they're going to win. In most cases, this really ends up being a race. Who can get all their colonies out the fastest? And that player is likely to win, but there are certain scenarios, certain pieces you can build out onto the board that give you bonus victory points. And you may not be in the lead when you build your last piece, and in that case, you won't win. So you need to strategically time the end of the game with the time when you have the most victory points, and that's what makes this one interesting. That, combined with the clever use of dice and the medium, lightish weight of the game, and the clever use of dice in a way that you can manipulate them and always use them for something makes it interesting. There's all types of technologies and different ways you can modify gameplay. So you can use this game to kind of use dice, but not feel like they're too random all the time. With that said, that's really all I have to say about Alien Frontiers, so check it out. That's a game from Clever Mojo Games, a really unique and very good dice rolling game.
Number 43, Notre Dame.
Yet again, Stefan Feld makes an appearance in my top 100. This time with a much older game. So this time we're looking at Notre Dame, which is what many people would consider to be a classic. I believe it's currently out of print, but it's one that if you haven't played or you don't have, you should definitely check out, especially if you're a fan of Feld. In this game, each player has a deck of action cards. And during the rounds, there will be 9 rounds. You're going to draw 3 of those action cards, and you're going to draft with them, meaning you're going to take one card, pass them around, the next player will take one of your cards, and so forth and so on, and you'll end up with these cards. And then you're going to use these cards, including using the other player's cards that you've drafted, in order to take actions. These actions will be activating different buildings. On the buildings, the more times you activate them, meaning the more times you get to use the same card, the better the result of those buildings are going to be. And so you're collecting points and you're trying to outdraft the other players, make sure that they don't get the card that they need too many times in order to activate the building they need too many times, and of course get a lot of victory points or a lot of money or whatever the case may be. So there's kind of a strategy in the game to drafting the cards, and that plays out very well. In addition, at the end of the rounds, you get to activate a special person, and that person will give you some type of benefit that you can use to further your position in the game. Again, these are all games that I've reviewed, but the feeling in this one with Feld is that he manages to do a lot with very few components. In this game, it's mostly these cards, but the drafting mechanic and the fact that each player has the same cards but may not draw the same cards each round, and then the fact that you have to give up some of your own cards during the draft makes it unique and interesting and gives it a good feel to it. You always have access to your 3 cards, but which one you choose changes how the game's going to go, and then which ones get passed to you changes it even further, and you have to adapt to that changing environment very quickly. There's also, of course, a plague aspect, and if you don't keep up with the plague, you have to suffer the penalties of that. But all in all, the game really focuses around that drafting mechanic, and of course, utilizing that drafting mechanic to activate the same buildings over and over and strategically use those building activations to score points. I'm not going to say a whole lot more. I just think you should check out my video of it if you haven't seen it. It's up on Board Game Geek. Another great Feld game, one that I definitely suggest checking out, Notre Dame from Rio Grande Games.
Number 42, Automobile.
Now we have another game from who is perhaps my second favorite designer, maybe third, but he's definitely up there, and that is Martin Wallace. This is one of the few games that I own a deluxe edition of, and this is the deluxe edition of Automobile. So Automobile comes in pretty high on my list here. We're in the 40s now. We saw Discworld from Martin Wallace earlier, but this is a game where you're, of course, making cars. You're going to try and make and market your models of cars. You can choose the option of making cheap cars, lots of cheap cars, and trying to sell them off for a little bit of profit. Or you can choose the route of making medium cars and trying to sell them off. Or, of course, you can always go the high-end route and try and make more money. But the production costs and the ability to make these cars varies. So it's easier to make cheap cars, it's harder to make expensive cars. And at the same time, expensive cars sell for more, but you may be able to offload a lot more cheaper cars. In addition, if you have obsolete cars, cars that are no longer good, cars that are no longer in demand, you're going to lose points for that. And this is one of those games that's very punishing. If you have the wrong thing at the wrong time, you're going to lose a lot of points. That's going to be bad. If you have excess stock, you're going to lose points. That's going to be bad. If you're unable to sell your stuff just because you didn't get in there in time, everybody else is out on the floor, and you didn't get the positions to sell, that's going to be bad. But you can use special abilities that are available at the beginning of the rounds, which are you choose abilities and that'll base the turn order, but each different person you can choose gives you a different ability, and which person you choose is going to change how you're going to react during that round. Some people will let you sell extra cars, some people will let you produce cheaper, some people will let you buy extra factories for the production of your cars. But the choices you make in buying cars, the types of cars you produce, and then a little bit of variability in what cars will be optionally sold, what the demand is going to be for cars, will change the game each time, and the game is going to modify itself based on this little bit of randomness that's included in the demand aspect of the game. There's always the same cars available to build, but the demand for what might want to be sold will change each time. And that's going to keep you on your toes and keep you reacting to what's happening in the game, making it very interesting and interactive. So it's a high strategy game. It's a very demanding, it's a very punishing game, and I like that. I like the fact that if I make a big mistake, I'm going to pay for it, and I'm not going to win the game. If you haven't figured that out by now, I'm a gamer who's focused very much on winning the game based on my own unique strategy, based on my outthinking everybody else, and this is a game that rewards that type of play. You don't need the deluxe edition. I just have it because I really enjoy the game and I was able to get my hands on it. It doesn't change anything about the game. Actually, the older Tree Frog versions of the games are perhaps a little bit nicer even than the deluxe version, but all of these versions play very well. They're very fun, and they offer a great amount of strategy.
Number 41, Stone Age.
Rounding out this video, we have one of the games that got me into gaming. It's perhaps the first Euro game I ever played, and it's one that I still have in my collection today. I actually brought back into my collection because it's so good for beginning gamers and gamers who aren't familiar with Euro genre. That game is Stone Age, which has some beautiful artwork by Metzler, one of my favorite board game artists, and it has some great components which are printed on both sides. Now, one of the major complaints about this game is actually when you open it up, it smells terrible. And that's because it has a leather dice cup inside of it that smells really bad. I'm not going to bother taking it out because it's buried underneath a lot of stuff, but it's a major complaint about the game. But this is another dice rolling game. It's a worker placement game that combines worker placement with dice rolling. And you're going to place your workers out onto the board in order to accomplish actions, be it gathering resources, making more workers, or buying huts, which is really one of the main paths to victory in the game. You're going to collect resources to buy huts, which will give you victory points. Now, when you roll these dice, you're going to be rolling them for collecting resources. It could be wood or food or bricks or gold. And you're going to need those resources to buy the huts, and the better resources are spent on better huts. You can also use those resources to buy cards, and cards are a way to score victory points at the end of the game. They give you a benefit immediately when you buy them, but they also may have symbols on them which can score you points at the end of the game based on a set collection type of game mechanic, where if you have multiples of the same type of card or a lot of different types of cards, you can score points in that way. In addition to that, you're going to be able to modify the dice rolls, and that's always a key mechanic for me when you have dice in a game. If you're not able to modify the dice rolls, if you're not able to mitigate the luck of the dice, you can simply lose by rolling all ones, which is never fun. If you roll a lot of dice and they roll poorly, you're never going to enjoy it, unless you're one of those players that's a glutton for punishment and really likes to play things like Talisman or something like that, and you really enjoy that luck aspect. But I never have fun if I roll poorly, and there's nothing I can do about it. This game includes a mechanic where you can basically buy tools, which will allow you to adjust your die roll, using those tools to increase the pips on your dice, and more pips is always better in this game. So you can use those strategically, plan it out to buy more tools, and then use the tools in order to improve your dice rolls later in the game, hopefully, mitigating that luck and pushing you towards the win. And whoever does that the best is going to win. So the game is very easy to learn. It has the very basic worker placement and dice rolling mechanics. Allows you to gather those resources and then turn those resources into victory points, and I think basically paves the way for more complex Euro games. It's the one that I always use for introducing new Euro gamers. Usually they enjoy it, usually they get hooked, and then if you really want to take it further, you can use the poorly named but very well designed Stone Age Style is the Goal expansion to keep the game fresh for you and add one more player. Anyhow, you should definitely check it out, especially if you need a good intro game for your players. That's Stone Age, one of the first Euro games I ever played, and one that is still in my collection. There you have it, the first 10 games of my top 50. We're now out of the lower 50 and we're into my favorite 50 games. And as I promised you, it's a little bit more Euro-centric, but we're still getting some abstracts in there, and you'll continue to see some more abstracts. And we're also getting some thematic games in there. I think I probably surprised a lot of you with my love for Blood Bowl. It being in my top 50 games, it's chaotic, but it's a lot of fun. And you can, see the strategy in it, you can have the planning, but all of that planning can go awry, and everything will inevitably go poorly for you. If you've played Blood Bowl, you know what I'm talking about. It always goes poorly for you, but sometimes you pull out a win anyway. Anyhow, stay tuned. We're going to be back with more videos. There's going to be another top 100 video probably later this week, but it may be next week, where I'll go through games 40 to 31, and hopefully you'll see some more games that interest you.